What if everything you thought you knew about Leonardo da Vinci was wrong? For centuries, stories of secret societies, hidden brotherhoods, and coded messages buried inside his paintings have fascinated the world. Movies and novels have painted Leonardo as the eternal guardian of a mystical secret passed down from Jesus himself. But what if I told you that this image is, in reality, a modern invention, an illusion born of our hunger for mystery? Has this ever happened to you, believing a story because it felt too captivating to question? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you even more than the myths themselves. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. The truth is far stranger, darker, and more fascinating than fiction. The real secrets of Leonardo da Vinci do not lie in imagined rituals of hidden orders, but in the tangible fragments he left behind. The war machines he designed with deliberate flaws, the cadavers he dissected in secret, the accusations that shadowed his youth, and the haunting smile that has obsessed humanity for centuries. These are not the inventions of storytellers. They are the genuine mysteries carved into his legacy. When you look closely at his life, Leonardo becomes more than just the Renaissance genius. We see a man marked by contradictions, curiosity, and a relentless search for answers. Think about it. How could an illegitimate child, denied the education of his peers, rise to become one of the most celebrated minds of history? Without formal schooling in Latin or the humanities, Leonardo taught himself to read the world through observation and experimentation. He turned his outsider status into a strength, daring to see and record what others ignored. Doesn't that make you wonder how much of what we call genius is really about perspective? The courage to look where no one else dares to look. And then there are his works of art. The Last Supper, painted not as a still religious scene, but as an explosion of emotion, frozen in the very instant after Jesus' words shattered the calm. "One of you will betray me." Every apostle's face reacts like a shockwave, each movement captured with surgical precision. But the true mystery lies in the details: a spilled salt shaker before Judas, an absent Holy Grail, a hand gripping a knife that seems to belong to no one at all. Are these mere accidents of composition or deliberate messages left for us to decipher centuries later? And what about the Mona Lisa? 16 years of Leonardo's life poured into a single canvas, a portrait he never parted with, even to the one who commissioned it. Her smile both teases and guards its secrets, her face stripped of eyebrows, her background landscapes mismatched and dreamlike, creating a setting that feels at once familiar and impossible. In the 21st century, high-resolution technology even revealed microletters hidden in her eyes, as if Leonardo had embedded his own signature in the very soul of the painting. Can a simple portrait really hold that much meaning? Or was it always designed as a riddle for us to endlessly chase? Stay with me, because what we uncover next will dive even deeper into Leonardo's world, beyond the painted surfaces and into the pages of his hidden notebooks, where his true mind unfolds. Imagine thousands of pages, written in mirror script, sketches of machines centuries ahead of their time, and a vision of humanity that seemed to belong not to the Renaissance, but to our present. What secrets are waiting there? What drove him to hide so much of his work from the world? We're just beginning this journey into the shadows of Da Vinci's genius, and the questions are only getting more intriguing. In the next part, we'll open those hidden notebooks and confront the darker truths he left behind, truths that may forever change the way you see him. If you enjoy diving into hidden truths and untold stories like this, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Every week, we uncover new perspectives that can change the way you see history and even yourself. Join in, and let's keep exploring together. Leonardo da Vinci's life began in a world bursting with transformation, yet scarred by endless conflict. The Renaissance promised light after the long shadows of the Middle Ages, a dazzling rebirth of art, philosophy, and science. But behind the scenes, it was also a stage for ruthless ambition, betrayals, and power struggles. This duality, the brilliance of human creativity colliding with the brutality of politics and war, shaped the very mindset of the young Leonardo. He grew up in an Italy where beauty and violence walked hand in hand, where every decision could carry the weight of destiny, and where the hidden truth of survival was to adapt faster than anyone else. Leonardo's story is all the more remarkable because he entered this world already marked as different. Born the illegitimate son of a wealthy notary and a humble peasant woman, he carried a social stain that denied him access to the privileges of education and inheritance. In a society obsessed with lineage and reputation, he was forced to stand at the margins, an outsider whose path would never be conventional. And yet, this exclusion may have been the very spark that ignited his journey of discovery. Deprived of traditional schooling, he was freed from the rigid structures of academic thought and allowed his curiosity to wander without boundaries. Instead of learning from books, Leonardo turned his gaze to the world itself. Every leaf, every stream of water, every movement of the stars became his classroom. He trusted his eyes more than the words of scholars and relied on direct experimentation as his teacher. Imagine the courage it takes to build your own understanding of life, to refuse the accepted truths of your time and create your own system of knowledge. That decision, born from necessity, became the foundation of his genius. This mindset did more than set him apart. It transformed him into something rare, a thinker unchained by convention. While others memorized the writings of the ancients, Leonardo dissected nature itself, uncovering revelations that books could never teach. He lived in a constant state of exploration, seeing connections between art, science, and engineering that no one else dared to imagine. His journey was not about fitting into society's mold, but about bending reality to match his vision. And it is here, in this collision between rejection and independence, that the first glimpse of his true power appears. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding Leonardo's beginnings is not just about history. It's about the mindset of a man who turned limitations into possibilities and obstacles into opportunities for creation. His path reminds us that being an outsider is not always a weakness. Sometimes it's the hidden key to innovation, the spark that opens doors others can't even see. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," if you believe that what seems like a disadvantage can sometimes become the very source of transformation. When Leonardo da Vinci approached the creation of the Last Supper, he did not simply intend to retell a biblical story. He sought to transform the way we perceive the very moment of revelation. Instead of portraying a calm, static scene, he froze the exact second after Jesus uttered the words that shattered the silence of the table. "One of you will betray me." That decision was revolutionary because it carried the impact of a psychological explosion. The apostles are not passive figures. They are caught mid-reaction, each face, each gesture, a mirror of shock, anger, disbelief, or denial. It is as if Leonardo opened a window into the human soul, capturing emotions in motion, a truth hidden in plain sight that few had ever dared to represent. But the true genius lies in the layers of mystery that he wove into the scene. Behind the beauty of composition and balance, he embedded details that still ignite debates today. Look closely at the figure believed to be John. His features are strikingly soft, almost feminine, and for centuries people have wondered whether Leonardo intended this to be Mary Magdalene rather than the apostle. Was this an intentional revelation or simply the style of the time? And then there is the salt cellar overturned in front of Judas, a subtle but powerful symbol. Spilling salt has long been seen as a sign of misfortune, and here it becomes a quiet declaration of guilt, an omen of betrayal that could easily go unnoticed. Perhaps most disturbing is the mysterious hand gripping a knife. It seems disconnected, belonging to no visible figure, hovering between Peter and Judas, an unclaimed extension of hidden violence. Was this a mistake, a slip of composition? Highly unlikely. Leonardo's precision was no accident. That knife is a shadow of treachery, a symbol of what lurked behind the sacred meal, a reminder that betrayal often hides behind familiar faces. These details are not decorative flourishes. They are deliberate decisions meant to unsettle, to force us to question what we see and to look beyond the surface. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what Leonardo accomplished here was more than artistic brilliance. It was a mindset shift, a redefinition of how stories could be told through images. He invited viewers to enter the painting, to participate in the tension, to feel the impact of truth breaking into a moment of trust. His Last Supper was not just a depiction, it was a revelation, one that continues to resonate because it reflects the timeless human condition. Trust, doubt, loyalty, and betrayal all colliding in a single instant. And within that clash lies the hidden truth Leonardo was always chasing, the belief that art could expose what words could never capture. Write in the comments, "I see the hidden truth," if you've ever looked at a work of art, a story, or even a decision in your own journey, and realized there was more happening behind the scenes than what first met the eye. Leonardo's obsession with the Mona Lisa is unlike anything else in the history of art. 16 years of his life, constantly reworking, adjusting, and refining, as if the painting was never truly finished, as if it resisted closure. He never handed it over to the person who commissioned it, keeping it close until his death. That decision alone tells us something extraordinary. This was not a mere portrait but a personal experiment, a reflection of his inner journey. It's as if Leonardo poured not only his technical skill into the canvas, but also fragments of his own hidden truth, leaving behind a puzzle that still defies explanation. At first glance, the Mona Lisa seems deceptively simple, a woman seated against a landscape, her hands folded, her smile faint. But the more you look, the more unsettling details appear. Why does she have no eyebrows or eyelashes? Was this a forgotten detail? Or did Leonardo intentionally leave her incomplete to emphasize the fleeting nature of beauty? And then there is the background. The left horizon and the right horizon sit at different levels, creating a world that feels strangely unreal, a dreamscape disguised as reality. It's almost as if the painting were designed to destabilize us, to remind us that perception itself can be deceiving. And then come the revelations that technology uncovered centuries later. Using high-resolution scans, researchers claim to have found microletters embedded within her eyes, the initials LePU in one pupil, and perhaps a B or C in the other. Was this Leonardo's secret way of leaving his mark? A hidden code only visible to those who would one day look closer? If true, it means the painting was never just about her smile. It was about creating a layered message, a dialogue between artist and future generations. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the Mona Lisa is more than a portrait. It's a mindset, a deliberate construction of ambiguity. That half-smile is both warm and distant, inviting and elusive, a reminder of how the smallest details can carry the greatest impact. Leonardo understood that mystery has power. By refusing to give us certainty, he forces us to confront our own interpretations. In that sense, the Mona Lisa is less about who she was and more about who we are when we look at her. Every viewer projects something different onto her face, and that transformation is exactly why the painting still captivates us centuries later. Write in the comments, "I see the mystery," if you've ever felt that certain moments, people, or even decisions in your own journey held a meaning you couldn't fully explain, but you knew they carried something far deeper than what appeared on the surface. Leonardo's paintings were never just works of art. They were experiments disguised as beauty. Every stroke of light, every shade of shadow, every subtle expression became part of a larger test. For him, the canvas was a laboratory, a place to explore how anatomy, psychology, and perception could converge to reveal truths that words could never capture. When you look at his works with this in mind, you begin to see them less as finished masterpieces and more as ongoing studies, snapshots of a restless mind constantly pushing boundaries. Each painting became a fragment of a much greater journey, an endless pursuit of understanding where the hidden truth of human experience might be found. Yet, as captivating as his art is, it was only the surface of a much deeper ocean. His true legacy lies not only in the paintings we recognize instantly, but in the thousands of pages he filled with sketches, reflections, and inventions. Over 13,000 pages, known today as the codices, hold the labyrinth of his thoughts. To enter them is to step directly into Leonardo's mind, to witness the behind-the-scenes process that fueled his transformation from artist to visionary. Machines that seemed centuries ahead of their time, notes on flight, observations of water currents, studies of the human body. They are not scattered ideas but part of a single, unified curiosity that refused to accept limits. What makes these notebooks even more intriguing is the way they were written. Leonardo chose to write backwards, from right to left, in a mirror script that puzzled historians for centuries. Many assumed it was a code, a way of protecting his revelations from spies, rivals, or even the Inquisition. And yet, perhaps the explanation is far simpler. Being left-handed, he may have just been preventing ink from smudging under his hand. Still, the impact of this choice shaped the perception of his work forever. His writings became shrouded in secrecy, adding an aura of mystery that still fascinates us today. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because whether by intention or practicality, this reversed script became part of Leonardo's legend. It turned his personal notes into puzzles, demanding that readers engage with them differently, as if stepping into his world required a shift in perspective. And isn't that the essence of genius? The ability to force others to change their mindset, to look at the familiar in an unfamiliar way? In that sense, Leonardo's codices are not just notebooks. They are lessons in how to think, how to question, and how to reimagine the boundaries of possibility. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to see behind the scenes," if you believe that the greatest impact often comes not from what is presented openly, but from the hidden layers waiting to be uncovered. Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks reveal something astonishing. Centuries before the world would invent the technology to make them real, he had already envisioned machines that seemed to belong to another age. Helicopters with spinning blades rising into the air, submarines gliding silently beneath the water, armored vehicles designed to move across battlefields, even mechanical figures that resemble early robots. It's as though his imagination had slipped through time, pulling fragments of the future into the pages of the Renaissance. These sketches were not just flights of fancy. They were the result of a mindset that refused to see limits, a restless curiosity that dared to imagine what others could not even conceive. And yet behind these visions of transformation lies a contradiction. Leonardo hated war, describing it in his notes as the most bestial madness. He saw violence as an act that dehumanized both victim and aggressor, stripping away the very qualities that made life meaningful. But here is where his journey becomes darker. For much of his career, he was forced to work as a military engineer, designing weapons and fortifications for the most ruthless rulers of his time. The same man who dreamed of machines that could lift humanity into the skies was also responsible for machines designed to bring devastation. This duality reveals the hidden truth about survival in his era. Even a genius had to make compromises to secure patronage, to protect his work, and to fund his endless pursuit of knowledge. Nowhere is this tension more visible than in his service to Cesare Borgia, the feared son of Pope Alexander VI. Borgia was a man so ambitious and cruel that Machiavelli would later use him as the model for the prince. Under his command, Leonardo created designs for mobile bridges, new forms of catapults, and fortified structures capable of resisting siege. The impact of these decisions was immense, shaping the balance of power in a land torn by betrayal and ambition. Behind the scenes, Leonardo was walking a dangerous line, on one hand, contributing to destruction, and on the other, quietly embedding flaws or sabotaging details into his inventions, perhaps to prevent their full use. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because this paradox shows us more than just Leonardo's genius. It reveals his humanity. It forces us to confront the reality that brilliance often exists in tension with the world it inhabits. Leonardo's journey reminds us that innovation is never isolated from context. The same creativity that can inspire transformation can also be harnessed for darker purposes, depending on who controls it. And that raises a question not just about the past, but about ourselves today. How often do we find our own visions entangled with compromises, and what hidden choices shape the legacy we leave behind? Write in the comments, genius and contradiction, if you believe that true creativity often carries within it the weight of impossible decisions, where light and shadow coexist in the same mind. Among Leonardo's most intriguing creations was his design for what many call the world's first tank, a massive armored vehicle shaped like a moving fortress. On paper, it looked unstoppable, covered in protective plating, bristling with weapons, and capable of turning the tide of any battle. Yet hidden inside the elegant drawing was a deliberate flaw. The gears were arranged in such a way that the wheels could never move forward properly. To anyone who studies his precision, it is almost impossible to believe this was an accident. It seems more like a quiet act of defiance, a subtle sabotage disguised as innovation. Behind the scenes, this was Leonardo's way of balancing the impossible choices he faced, pleasing his patrons while refusing to hand them a weapon of pure destruction. This mindset reveals something profound about his character. On the surface, he appeared to serve the ambitions of warlords, designing bridges, fortresses, and machines of terror. But within the designs themselves, he embedded resistance, a hidden truth that only time would uncover. It's as though he was playing a double game, offering the illusion of loyalty while protecting his deeper values. That kind of decision reflects a man torn between survival and conscience, between the necessity of patronage and the moral weight of his creations. It's a paradox we rarely acknowledge. The same genius who dreamed of giving humanity wings also had to cloak his compassion in silence, sabotaging his own brilliance so that his inventions would never fulfill their deadly purpose. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because here we see the transformation of Leonardo, not only as an inventor, but as a strategist of survival. His journey shows us that creativity is not just about ideas. It is about navigating the impact those ideas will have in the real world. What choices do you make when your talent could be used for both wonder and destruction? Leonardo's answer was to walk a thin line, shaping a legacy filled with contradictions, where innovation was both a gift and a burden. The hidden message in these flawed machines is clear. Genius cannot exist in isolation from the moral weight of its consequences. Write in the comments, light and shadow coexist, if you feel that true greatness often emerges not in perfect clarity, but in the tension between opposing forces, where even the brightest visions carry with them a shadow. Leonardo's fascination with the human body was not a passing interest but an all-consuming obsession. At a time when such practices were forbidden, he entered morgues and hospitals in secret, often at night, to dissect cadavers. More than 30 men, women, elders, and even an unborn child became subjects of his relentless search for knowledge. In those silent rooms surrounded by shadows and the weight of taboo, Leonardo traced the hidden architecture of life itself. What others considered sacred and untouchable, he approached with the eyes of a scientist, documenting every layer of muscle, tendon, and organ with astonishing precision. The drawings he left behind are revelations of breathtaking clarity. He sketched the curve of the spine, the chambers of the heart, the intricate branching of the lungs, all centuries before medicine would confirm his findings. Each line carried not only accuracy but intention. He wasn't simply recording what he saw, he was translating the complexity of the body into a universal language. It was as though he sought to bridge the gap between art and science, between the beauty of form and the mechanics of function. This mindset of integration became one of his greatest gifts, because through it he proved that knowledge could transcend boundaries and bring transformation to every field it touched. But this journey came at a cost. Working in secrecy meant constant risk of being accused of sacrilege, risk of punishment by authorities, and risk of isolation from a society that feared what it did not understand. Still, Leonardo pressed forward, guided by the conviction that truth was worth the danger. This decision reveals the hidden truth of his character. He valued discovery more than safety, knowledge more than reputation. He was willing to step into forbidden territory because he believed that behind the scenes of human existence lay patterns and designs that could explain the very essence of life. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because Leonardo's dissections were not just about anatomy. They were about breaking barriers. His journey into the human body reflected the same mindset he carried into every aspect of his work, that limits exist only until someone dares to cross them. In those clandestine studies, he was not only mapping flesh and bone, he was redefining what it meant to seek understanding. And perhaps that is why his legacy still carries such impact, because it reminds us that true progress often begins where others refuse to look. Write in the comments, knowledge has no fear. If you believe that the greatest revelations often come when we step beyond the boundaries others are too afraid to cross. When Leonardo was just 24, a shadow fell over his life that would mark him forever. He was accused of sodomy in Florence, a crime so serious in that era that conviction could mean death by fire. Though the charges were eventually dropped for lack of evidence, the humiliation was public and devastating. Imagine being at the dawn of your journey, full of ambition and talent, only to find yourself branded with suspicion, your reputation placed under a cloud you could never fully escape. That kind of wound leaves a mark, not only on the body but on the mindset, shaping every decision that follows. From that moment, secrecy became not just a choice, but a necessity. The hidden truth is that much of Leonardo's lifelong obsession with privacy, with concealing his writings and coding his thoughts in mirrored script, can be traced back to this experience. He learned early that society could be cruel, that the same world that celebrated genius could also turn against it in an instant. His reaction was not to retreat completely, but to transform his way of working. He continued to observe, to experiment, to create, but always behind a veil, always with the understanding that not everything should be left exposed to judgment. This journey of becoming a wounded outsider gave him a perspective that few shared. Being on the margins allowed him to see the structures of power and prejudice more clearly. It forced him to cultivate independence, to place trust in his own vision rather than in the approval of others. Behind the scenes of his brilliance was a man carrying the weight of rejection, channeling that pain into a resilience that fueled his creativity. What society saw as a stigma, Leonardo transformed into a shield, one that protected the flame of his curiosity from being extinguished by external judgment. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because this moment reveals how transformation often comes from the most painful places. Leonardo's story reminds us that sometimes it is precisely the scars, the humiliations, and the betrayals that drive a person to redefine themselves. His secrecy was not only about protecting his ideas, but about protecting his very identity, a way of surviving in a world that had already shown him its dangers. This hidden struggle gave his work its depth, making each invention, each painting, each note in his codices not just a display of genius, but a declaration of resilience. Write in the comments, "Scars create strength," if you believe that even the most painful experiences can become the foundation for transformation and reveal the strength to continue a greater journey. The true dark side of Leonardo da Vinci was never about secret codes or hidden conspiracies whispered in shadowed rooms. It was something far more powerful and unsettling, an insatiable curiosity that refused to accept boundaries. He was not content to simply be an artist or an inventor or a scientist. He became all of these at once, erasing the artificial divisions that most minds are confined by. For Leonardo, a painting was not just a painting, but an experiment in light and perception. A machine was not just a machine, but an exploration of movement, balance, and possibility. He lived in a constant state of transformation, where every discipline blended into the next, where knowledge itself was fluid, adaptable, and limitless. This mindset placed him in a paradoxical position. He could move seamlessly between peace and war, beauty and brutality, the sacred and the scientific. To dissect a human body and to sketch the wings of an imagined flying machine were, for him, part of the same journey, a pursuit of truth hidden beneath appearances. While others were trapped in categories, Leonardo broke them apart, proving that creativity thrives not in isolation, but in connection. Behind the scenes of his genius lay the conviction that no subject was too dangerous, no question too forbidden, and no frontier too distant. That willingness to cross lines others feared gave his work both its brilliance and its weight. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what made Leonardo extraordinary was not only his ability to master skills, but his vision that reached beyond his own time. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be, stretching his imagination into futures that his contemporaries could not begin to grasp. In the 15th century, he dreamed of flying machines and submarines. In a world dominated by rigid thought, he imagined robots and mechanisms that anticipated modern industry. His mind was a bridge between eras, touching the Renaissance with one hand and the future with the other. This ability to see beyond the present is what truly defined the impact of his genius, and it is why his legacy continues to resonate centuries later. Write in the comments, "Curiosity breaks boundaries." If you feel that the greatest revelations come when we dare to step outside the limits imposed by time, tradition, or expectation, and embrace the endless possibilities of the unknown. In the final chapter of his journey, Leonardo da Vinci crossed the Alps and found himself in France, welcomed under the patronage of King Francis III. Far from the intrigues and rivalries of Italy, he discovered something he had rarely known in his earlier years: stability, admiration, and freedom to pursue his thoughts without the same constant struggle for patronage. At Clos-Lucé, his last residence, he carried with him not just his artworks, but the weight of a lifetime of discoveries, experiments, and contradictions. Surrounded by students and assistants, he was no longer the outsider marked by illegitimacy or accusation, but a figure cherished by the most powerful monarch of Europe. He died at the age of 67, and legend tells us that his final breath came in the arms of the king himself. Historians may doubt the accuracy of that story, yet what matters is the truth that the legend symbolizes. It reflects the extraordinary transformation of his life, from a child born outside the conventions of society to a man whose genius was revered by rulers and remembered by history. Behind the myth of his death lies a deeper revelation, that recognition is not always given in the beginning, but can emerge after a journey of perseverance, decisions, and resilience. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because Leonardo's ending in France is not just a closing of a life, but the culmination of a mindset that defied boundaries. He showed that no origin, no stigma, no wound is powerful enough to define an entire destiny. His path illustrates how the hidden truth of success often lies in persistence, in the courage to continue despite rejection, and in the refusal to let society's limitations extinguish curiosity. The impact of his story is not only in what he created, but in what he overcame to create it. From illegitimacy to immortality, from secrecy to reverence, his life stands as a journey of transformation that continues to inspire, not because it was flawless, but because it embraced both light and shadow. Write in the comments, "Genius transcends origins," if you believe that where we begin does not determine where we can go, and that behind the scenes of struggle may lie the seeds of greatness. Leonardo's life was a story of transformation in its purest form. He began as an illegitimate child in a society that valued lineage above talent, a boy denied access to the formal paths of knowledge. Yet through resilience and vision, he turned rejection into fuel, stepping into a destiny where the very qualities that once excluded him became the foundation of his uniqueness. What society labeled as weakness, he reshaped into strength. This journey from outsider to icon is not just history, it is a reminder of how deeply mindset and decisions can alter the course of a life. Behind the scenes of his genius, we see a man who refused to accept the limits placed upon him, and through that refusal, he rewrote what was possible. But then comes the question that lingers: was his brilliance inseparable from his secrets and contradictions? Perhaps his darkness was not a flaw, but the very element that allowed his light to shine brighter. His secrecy, his hidden codes, his refusal to hand over certain works, all of these choices point to a man who understood that mystery could be as impactful as revelation. He knew that sometimes what remains unsaid carries more power than what is revealed. The hidden truth is that the contradictions we see in Leonardo may not have been weaknesses at all, but part of the architecture of his genius. the tension that fueled his endless search for understanding. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there is another way to look at his silence, his secrecy, his tendency to retreat into shadows. Perhaps he did not choose secrecy simply as a shield, but as a necessity of being ahead of his time. Imagine living in an age where your thoughts belong to a future that does not yet exist, where your discoveries and inventions cannot be understood by the people around you. To live with that distance would mean carrying both vision and isolation at once. Leonardo's shadows may have been less about hiding and more about waiting for a world that could finally catch up to him. Write in the comments, ahead of his time, if you believe that some minds are so advanced that they are destined to live between eras, carrying the weight of revelations the world is not yet ready to receive. Leonardo's story leaves us with more than admiration. It leaves us with a mirror, an invitation to reflect on how we choose to interpret duality in our own lives. His journey shows that brilliance is rarely simple and never free of contradictions. He was both scientist and artist, pacifist and military engineer, visionary and outsider. That balance between extremes was not an accident, but the very structure of his genius. The impact of this duality is that it forces us to see greatness not as a clean narrative, but as a complex interplay of light and shadow. And perhaps that is why his legacy continues to resonate so deeply, because in him we recognize the same struggles and decisions that shape our own journeys, even if on a different scale. The hidden truth is that we all live with contradictions. We make choices that sometimes conflict with our ideals. We navigate between what the world demands of us and what we secretly long to create. Leonardo simply lived this tension more visibly, and through his life we can see how those contradictions, instead of destroying him, became part of his strength. Behind the scenes of his works, we don't just find sketches and inventions, we find the echo of a man grappling with the same paradoxes of purpose, survival, and vision that define every human story. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the question is not only about Leonardo, but about us. How do we handle the weight of our own dualities? Do we hide them, as he often did, or do we embrace them as fuel for transformation? The revelations of his life suggest that the answers are rarely absolute. Sometimes the very contradictions we try to silence are what make our impact unforgettable. Leonardo's duality was not a weakness but a reminder that greatness is never one-dimensional. It is carved from conflict, persistence, and the courage to live in between worlds. Write in the comments, duality shapes greatness. If you believe that our contradictions are not flaws to erase but forces that can give depth, resilience, and meaning to our journey. Every exploration of Leonardo's life reminds us that history is not a closed book, but a living dialogue, one that continues to unfold with every new discovery and every fresh perspective. The promise of more revelations is not just about unearthing forgotten details of the past, but about realizing how deeply those details still echo in our present. Each hidden truth we uncover reshapes our understanding, not only of Leonardo, but of the way transformation itself works through time. His notebooks, his inventions, his contradictions, they are not frozen relics, but mirrors that reflect the decisions and dilemmas we continue to face. When we speak of gratitude for this journey, it goes beyond the act of thanking those who walk with us through history. Gratitude here becomes a mindset, an acknowledgement that behind the scenes of every great figure lies a human being wrestling with fears, flaws, and hopes. Leonardo da Vinci may be remembered as a universal genius, but he also carried the scars of humiliation, the burden of secrecy, and the tension of choices that were never simple. To look at his life closely is to recognize the power of resilience, the beauty of curiosity, and the impact of daring to live ahead of one's time. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because closing a chapter on Leonardo does not mean ending the conversation. His journey reminds us that every ending is also a beginning, every answer a doorway to new questions. That is why history is so compelling. It is not static, but a constant invitation to revisit, to reinterpret, and to allow its stories to transform us. Leonardo's legacy is not confined to museums or manuscripts. It survives in the way his mindset challenges us to break our own barriers and to embrace the contradictions that make us human. Write in the comments, "History transforms me," if you feel that looking behind the curtain of the past has the power to shift your perspective, offering revelations that go beyond knowledge and touch the very way you see your own journey. If you've made it all the way here, it means this journey through Leonardo's hidden truths resonated with you in some way. That connection is exactly why I create these explorations. And if you'd like to keep uncovering stories like this, subscribing to the channel is the best way to stay close to this path. It's simple, and it ensures you won't miss the next set of revelations we'll unlock together. Also, let me know in the comments that you reached the end by writing, "I'm with you until the end." I'd love to see who stayed with me through every moment of this story. It makes this exchange feel even more alive. And if the impact of Leonardo's journey spoke to you, a like on the video is always appreciated. It's a small gesture that keeps this conversation flowing and helps bring more curious minds along. There's a video right here that complements this topic. Click and continue with me over there. The journey doesn't stop here.